Hello there. Today I'm coming at you with a little bit of a Sunday school study event where I am just kind of wanting to look into something and discuss something that has been on my mind recently. And that's the topic of demons and hell in general. But specifically the nature of demons and how they affect our life. That has been something that's been on my mind for just a little while now. And it's actually some discussions that I've had with my wife and just some back and forth conversations about these things. And there's just so much more complexity to it than I realized. So if you watch my recent analysis of the movie Nefarious, I think that movie takes a different approach than necessarily what everybody takes. I tended to agree with the theology in that movie, as I stated when I recorded the video, but since then I've put some time into it, and we're going to see if we can do, I want to just do like a kind of a look through the Bible and see if what I can find biblically on it, and I doubt we're going to come to any conclusion. So it's mostly just a discussion about why this is so complex and why it's so hard to determine what exactly that could be. So the biggest thing is, what are demons really? Like, what are they? And when we were watching the movie Nefarious, it posits that they're fallen angels. And that was the belief that I originally subscribed to, that they're 100% the fallen angels, the 1/3 of the heavenly hosts that fell during Satan's revolution, or rebellion, rather. And so the demons that we hear about would actually be them. And so then I disbelieved in the existence of ghosts and the existence of spirits and all of those things, and I subscribed to an idea that I had heard from lots of people actually, that the spirits and things that people see that are like ghosts of people in the afterlife and people who are dead and gone are actually just demons pretending to be those people, and that starts again with the idea that the demons are fallen angels. They're angels, and not like the spirits of the dead. However, I recently came across the idea that that is not the case, that spirits are actually the spirits of the dead. And I will pull this up for you because I thought it was very interesting. The individual who I heard speak on, he was actually on, is it Phil Robertson's podcast with Phil and Jace Robertson and the other Robertson brother. I should pull that up. I'll pull it up. Phil, Jace, Robertson, podcast. Unashamed, that's what it's called. So I'll put a link to the exact episode. But they did an interview with Joe Beam here. And Joe Beam is a speaker who mostly specializes in marriage from a Christian perspective generally. But he was talking about his book, Seeing the Unseen, and discussing his view on it, in which he basically says that, so far as he can tell, let me move my cam window. That's not what I wanted to do. Can I move my cam? I feel like my cam needs moved up. Like that. Does that look more normal? I guess it's fine there. I'll leave it there. I seem to have a kind of a crossbar at the top there. Not a big deal. But he seems confident that demons are indeed spirits, the spirits of the evil dead, to some extent, and that that's the reason that we hear about them looking for bodies and such, and needing a human host, and all of those kind of things that he says an angel or fallen angel wouldn't need, and that his belief is actually older than the idea about fallen angels, which is a more recently developed belief. So now I'm not super familiar with all this, and that's what I want to look into a little bit today. And then maybe I'm hoping as I just go forward, there will be more videos about this topic, because it's a very fascinating topic, and I think it's just worth having a small scale discussion about. So what I wanted to start with was a couple of things here. So first, we can see a number of Bible verses that mention ghosts. And I always thought that was so fascinating. So here, when we look at Matthew 14:26, when Jesus walks on the water, the disciples are terrified and they say, it's a ghost. Mark 6:49 recalls that same story. And then when he is resurrected, he says he is not a ghost, because all the disciples are once again afraid that he is a ghost. And he says, a ghost does not have flesh and bones. So this seems like an 100% authentication that ghosts are real, or spirits, or some idea of these things, at least in the Hebrew aspect. Then we have also, there's talking about the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit. Obviously, that's totally different there. Then we have Isaiah, the mention to they will resort to idols and ghosts of the dead, to mediums and spiritists. And we actually have the validation of mediums actually being able to speak with the dead in Samuel. I'm not sure if that one will be on here. But there's the passage in Samuel where Saul speaks to the spirit. Let's see if I can't find Saul medium. Or is it Saul? King Saul? Yeah, Saul medium. Can I find that passage? Yeah. 1 Samuel 28. Maybe I can just look up 1 Samuel 28 and just read this whole deal. I like the NKJV just personally. We see that in this story, obviously Samuel had died, and Saul says, "Find me a woman who's a medium that I may go to her and inquire of her." And he goes to the medium, and he asks him to conduct a seance for me and bring up the one I shall name to you. And he asks her to bring up Samuel. And the woman saw Samuel. Samuel legitimately seems to appear to Saul and speak to him. And Saul perceives Samuel and bows to him. And Samuel literally says, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" So this seems to be an authentic case of a medium being able to resurrect the spirit of Samuel. This brings to mind so many questions, one of which I want to address in a later video, which was there always hell? Is there currently hell in the way that we think about it? Do people die and go directly to hell at this time? That's something that I'm not entirely sure about, because let's think, in this instance, we would assume that Samuel was in heaven. Jesus tells us that when we die, we'll be with the Lord on the day that we die, but that's not necessarily an idea in the Old Testament. So is it the case that these people are in limbo or purgatory as kind of the old Catholic idea of it? Or is there something more complicated to it? So I'm not really sure about any of those things, but that's just an even more difficult question. But really here we have the idea of the resurrection of a spirit, sort of a ghost, and that being associated with mediums in the book of Isaiah, like we read about. And so there's this idea of ghosts and resurrected spirits or dead spirits being present throughout the Bible. And Jesus doesn't do away with it, which I think is possibly the most interesting part. Luke 24. Let's take a look at Luke 24, because I think that's just so interesting. So Jesus doesn't tell them they're wrong in this situation when Jesus appears to his disciples. Jesus himself stood among them while they were describing these things and said shalom, but they were startled and frightened, thinking they had seen a spirit. It uses the word spirit here. We'll take a look at this in Greek. And Jesus says, "Why are you troubled, and why have doubts arisen in your heart? Look at my hands and feet. Know that it is I myself. Touch me and see, for a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have." Okay, so here we have references to spirits and ghosts. But now, these things don't seem to be necessarily the same as or associated with the idea of demons. So let's see if we could get a nice list here of it's like every mention of demons in the Bible. The beauty of the internet here. We'll use Bible study tools here so we can see just all of the references that we need here. They're positing some ideas, but I kind of want to just look at them neutrally. So James tells us that even the demons believe in God. And we can check that the word used here is always referring to demons. So for instance, James 2:19, we can see, let's go to the Interlinear Bible and take a look at it in there. The daimonia, evil spirit demon, a heathen deity, is sometimes used to refer to it. So, a demonic being, derivative of daemon. So we could look at all the instances in which this is used. So we can see Matthew using this when he's casting out demons, when we're referencing Satan as the ruler of demons. Here we have Satan being called Beelzebub, casting out devils. Devils and demons both being translated this way. So you could look through just every mention of this. And as you can see, which is also what I wanted to address, they're almost all in the New Testament. There's not generally this idea of demons in the Old Testament. And I think Another large resource on this would be the Book of Enoch. So I have a lot of interest in examining the Book of Enoch and seeing what its points are. Obviously, we don't necessarily take the Book of Enoch as scripture. However, we know that the Book of Enoch is quoted in the Book of Jude, which is a really fascinating point because it just shows that Jude's awareness of it, which is sort of a big deal. It makes the Book of Enoch seem to be a big deal, maybe just as a respected literature source. So maybe it's not God-inspired, but maybe they believe what Enoch is saying to be true. So I want to do another video where we just examine the Book of Enoch, not as it just what it says, but just does it align with the rest of the biblical canon? Does it say anything that disaligns with the rest of the biblical canon? And is there a reason why it's really excluded? I think that would be an interesting idea for a video as well. So, but we can see all of these mentions of demons. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Here we have in Job 4:15 a reference to a spirit. That's very interesting. Let's look at that, Job 4. So this is actually Eliphaz the Temanite talking in response to Job. A word was secretly brought to me, and my ear received a whisper of it. In disquieting thoughts from the visions of the night, when deep sleep falls upon men, fear came upon me, and trembling, which made all my bones shake. Then a spirit passed before my face, the hair on my body stood up. It stood still, but I could not discern its appearance. A form was before my eyes, there was silence, then I heard a voice saying, Can a mortal be more righteous than God? Can a man be more pure than his Maker? So they're taking that as a reference to a demon, but it's clearly talking about just the spirit. So let's see if we can't determine what is being used here in Hebrew. And a spirit before my face passed and stood up the body hair on my head. Veruach. That's why it's pulling in. Which is used to refer to the Spirit of God. It's used to refer to the wind in Exodus. That's very fascinating. The Spirit of the Lord in Judges. So it seems to be this sort of idea of an undeterminable spirit, a wisp, a wind. It's really fascinating. So this person seems to be associated, but that doesn't seem to be clearly a reference to a demon. What it's saying there. We're talking about idols. So we associate, a lot of people in modern Christianity associate the old gods of the Old Testament, those false gods that were worshipped by the Canaanites and etc., such as Baal and Molech and all of these very famous gods in the Old Testament. We take those to be perhaps archdemons, to perhaps be fallen angels who are commanding the respect of the people. That is this the case? And like, are they one or the other? Are they both? And is that possible for there to be both? So it's not until we get into the New Testament that we're really seeing. Here we have an idea of evil spirits. So they called Mary Magdalene. This is a good one because it mentions both evil spirits and demons in the same passage. Let's look at Luke 8:2. Not that way. It came to pass afterwards soon that he was traveling throughout the city and the village, preaching and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom of God. And the 12 disciples were with him, and women, certain of whom had been cured from evil spirits and infirmities. Mary, who is called Magdalene, from whom demons had been cast out. So here we have the use of demonia, again, referring to demons. But here we have the use of pneumaton, from which we get the word wind, breath, spirit. So that's really similar to that dual connotation of wind and spirit that we just saw in the Old Testament. And then we have the word evil, bad, wicked, malicious, or slothful. I'm curious in what other cases. So here we have reference to the things that Herod did. Perverse and evil and wicked men. So that's an interesting point. So we have that use of evil spirit here. Pneumaton is a very interesting word. It always seems to be a reference to spirit. Pneumaton. It talks about the gift of discerning spirits, of evil spirits. It's used almost always in of evil spirits. The God of the spirits of the prophets used in Revelation. That's an interesting quote. So here we have the association of the spirit being an evil spirit being associated with a demon. So there we have the idea that an evil spirit is the same thing. So now the question is a spirit the same as an angel? Do we have any association between spirits and angel? And I don't necessarily think that we do. If we look up spirit and angel just out of curiosity to see if we got anywhere they're mentioned. It seems to be in Strong's Greek. Is that because of where I am, perhaps? Go back to just the Bible. So here in Acts, we have the association of angels and spirits, it would seem. Oh, and here's some Old Testament. Let's compare some Old Testament and some New Testament. Here's two really great examples. So let's look at the New Testament in Acts 23:8, where we get, for the Sadducees say there is no resurrection or angels or spirits. So here we have sort of a differentiation between angels and spirits, it seems, which is really important. So let's look at Acts 23 in the interlinear, because I love my interlinear Bible. Of course, we can only go one passage at a time. What did I say, 23:8, I think it was? Yes, the Sadducees indeed say there not to be any resurrection, no angel, the literal word for messenger, from which we get angel, nor spirit, also again using that pneuma prefix that we saw before, that is the same references. And so it's hard to say if that's a differentiation there. You'd think it would say nor angelic spirit or something like that. Like, it seems that spirits are separate than angels. So that seems to reinforce the idea that there could be these evil spirits that are not the same as fallen angels. Could demons be both fallen angels and unclean spirits? Could be a mix of both. Could perhaps the unclean spirits be the ones who are doing the possession, but perhaps the old gods of the New Testament are examples of fallen angels ruling on earth? We know that Satan walks the earth and is the ruler of this world, as Jesus calls him. So are the other fallen angels participating in that? Where did the other fallen angels go when they fell from heaven? It seems to be insinuated that they would be participating in these kind of things. But perhaps there's a major difference between them and demons. Let's look at this passage in Zechariah, which is super interesting. The four spirits of heaven in Zechariah's vision in Zechariah 6. Zechariah is an excellent book of the Bible. Let's look at the whole passage of Zechariah 6, not in interlinear first. I just want to look at it in like regular, so we can get an idea of this whole vision. He turned and raised his eyes and looked, and behold, 4 chariots coming from between 2 mountains, and the mountains were mountains of bronze. With the first chariot were red, the second black, the third white, and with the fourth dappled horses, strong steeds. Then I answered and said to the angel who talked with me, so he's speaking to an angel in his vision, as is pretty common with a lot of these Old Testament prophecies. The angel answered back, "These are the 4 spirits of heaven who go out from their station before the Lord of all the earth. The one with the black horse is going to a different country," and etc., etc., etc. So what would it mean to reference the spirits of heaven? So a spirit as associated with the wind or a ghost, as we've seen. This doesn't seem to be a reference. 4 spirits of heaven doesn't seem to be a reference to those who've passed. It doesn't seem to be a reference to dead individuals, for example. That seems strictly unique. So I'm curious if we can look at this. Of course not. We have to go find it. So here we have the word spirits, ruchot. I don't know anything about Hebrew. I know a great deal more about Greek, and I don't really know anything about Greek either, but I know a lot more about Koine Greek than I do about anything to do with Strong's Hebrew. So this word seems to be very multi-referenceable, which is very typical of Hebrew. That thing I do know is that many words have various meanings, and so their interpretations can be very difficult. So 4 spirits, here we have 4 sides, 4 quarters, 4 aspects, 4 winds, 4 spirits, 4 messengers. So he makes the winds his messengers, his angels spirits. Now that's really interesting, because Psalm 104:4 seems to be kind of putting angels and spirits together, at least in the King James Version, because he makes spirits his messengers. And we see a lot of references to the four winds. And so perhaps the four spirits is really referring to the four winds of heaven. We get the four winds of heaven in Daniel as well. So four winds of the heavens in the Zechariah 2:6 that we're looking at. But then in 6:5, four spirits of heaven. Whereas it seems more commonly translated as winds. So it's interesting that it's translated that way in Zechariah 6:5. That's really fascinating. There's so many different use cases for this that it's just so difficult. But I can't see necessarily any instances where spirits seem to be associated with angels. And we don't get a lot of references to fallen angels outside of the context that we have from the book of Enoch and from the single verse about the Nephilim in Genesis. And that's even debated among modern scholars, whether the Nephilim is really what it sounds like, or if it's just something of the sons of Cain, is what a lot of people believe, is that the sons of Cain created the Nephilim, or created just these abominations or something along those lines. Whereas a more typical reading suggests that when it says the son of men saw the daughters of men, or sorry, the sons of God saw the daughters of men and found them attractive and committed adultery with them, essentially, which we believe results in the Nephilim, if you believe that those are the fallen angels, which most people hold that, as far as I'm aware, in theological circles. But there's debate amongst even that, so it's hard to say. But that is one of the only examples that we have of really the discussion of fallen angels in the Bible. There's just not much to it. It's not until we get to the New Testament that we get a lot of references from Jesus to hell and a lot of references from Jesus to demons. And it's just not clear exactly what they are. I can't make a strict determination except to say that it does seem accurate to connotate demons more with unclean spirits. And it's not clear to me that unclean spirits can be associated with angels. That seems to be an idea that we just sort of came up with. I always thought that it was just kind of hoo-ha to say that there were ghosts. I never believed in ghosts, personally. I've never had an experience that provided the idea of ghosts to me. And I didn't think it correlated with Scripture. But like I showed you at the beginning of the video, I'm puzzled recently because of this kind of reminder that there are so many passages where the idea of a ghost or a spirit are mentioned in both positive and negative connotations. And the same word that's used for spirits is used to refer to unclean spirits, which are then compared to demons. So it seems to be the situation where some form of spirit or ghost or something can be associated with demons. So demons could very well be the undead spirits of people who lived and died and now have no place in either heaven or hell and are trying to stay out of hell. So what I want to leave you with is a passage that I was reading again today, which is where, let's see if I can find the demon. If I look up demons and swine, that should give it to me. Why is it not giving me the verse that I want? I'll look up Legion. That should do it. Luke 8:30. So if we just look up Luke 8, I'll just read you this passage as a final note here, because it's one of the passages that's used for evidence here. So when Jesus encounters this man who it says is possessed by a demon-possessed man, and Jesus commanded the unclean spirit to come out of him. Many times it had seized him, and though he was bound with chains and shackles, he had broken the chains and been driven by the demon into solitary places. The demon tells him that his name is Legion, for we are many demons. The demons begged Jesus not to order them to go into the abyss. This is what is so interesting about this passage. So it seems like the demons are avoiding hell or the abyss, whichever if those two things are the same, which they're often correlated to be the same. The abyss seems to be more consistent with ideas of the grave and Sheol that we have in the Old Testament, versus the fires of hell that we now imagine, which mostly comes from the parable that Jesus tells about Abraham and the man on the other side trying to communicate to Abraham who's in heaven, and from the idea of the lake of fire, which we learn about in Revelation, has been prepared for the devil and his angels. So that's mostly where we get our typical idea of hell. So here we have this idea of the abyss. which is used a lot more typically in the Old Testament. So the demons are trying to stay out of the abyss. So that seems to confer. I used to take it, so I feel like it could go either way, because I used to take it as the fallen angels trying to stay out of hell, because you would still hold the belief that fallen angels are punished in hell, so they're possessing people so that they can stay on earth. But it's not clear that that's the case. It could also very well be that they are dead souls of evil people who are also trying to stay out of hell or the abyss, and so for whatever reason, the demons or the fallen angels request that Jesus allow them to enter swine so that they don't get sent back to hell. It's like, we'll go out of this man, but please just give us to the pigs so that we don't have to go back to the abyss. And then what I think is meant to be the irony of this, I used to not understand this passage. I was like, why would Jesus kill a bunch of pigs? But that's not what happened. It seems most likely that the demons came out of the man, verse 33, the demons came out of the man and went into the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and drowned. So all of these demons go into the lake, which is just very interesting. And it seems more likely that this is, I wouldn't say it's directly Jesus' actions. It could be God's actions. It could just be an action of fate. But essentially that the demons were not able to hold the sanity of the pigs that they possessed or whatever. And so the pigs died. And the demons ultimately, from that, would not have had anywhere else to pass into. And so they would have gone back to the abyss. So it's sort of like, please don't send us back to the abyss. We'll even go into these pigs. And Jesus says, sure, you can go to those pigs. And then the pigs run down and die. And they end up in the abyss anyway. So it's sort of like a punishment for the unclean spirits, perhaps. And I just think that this, again, is just such an interesting passage, and it really just begs the question of whether we can really say that these are more likely to be fallen angels or they're more likely to be demons. So spirits and angels are a very confusing topic, and I wanted to this is just an entry-level discussion into it today. I just wanted to discuss this a little bit and some of the feelings and thoughts I've had about it. I'm really interested to learn more about it. I'm going to be doing my research and seeing what I can see. I'd also love to just hear any input if anybody has any ideas that they think about this or are supporting documents. And like I said, I want to get to the Book of Enoch at some point, and I think it's something that would be interesting to review when considering this topic. So either way, I hope you found this interesting. If you did, feel free to write me a comment, let me know. If you like and subscribe to the channel, any of those things, I just really appreciate it. I'm just looking to kind of get into more discussion and stuff like this. I'll link the Unashamed podcast in the description, and this, for everyone's reference, is Bible Hub, and if you haven't used Bible Hub, you should use Bible Hub. It's the greatest thing ever. You can do so many things with exploring the Bible, and I just recommend it to everyone. It's completely unsponsored. It's just an amazing tool to use when trying to research the Bible and determine truth for yourself. So there's not a lot of conclusions in this video, just the discussion, and I hope that you found this interesting. So if you have been, thank you for watching, and I pray that you all have a good day.